The alien starship floated high above Earth, a massive tower of silver and glass glowing against the black of space. Inside, the medical bay looked cold and strange. Machines hummed with a low buzz, and bright lights bounced off smooth walls. In the center of the room stood Dr. Zilak, a tall alien from the Krillak species. His 4 long arms moved fast, each holding a different tool. His glowing blue eyes narrowed as he stared down at the human on the table. Private Daniel Carter lay there, strapped tight with metal bands. He didn't move, but his chest rose and fell with steady breaths. Zilak turned to his assistant, a younger Krillak named Vexen, who stood nearby with a tablet in 2 of his hands. "Look at this creature," Zilak said, his voice sharp and loud. "So weak. 1 heart. Fragile bones. No scales or claws. How do these humans even live?" He waved a thin, shiny tool over Carter's arm, scanning it. The screen above beeped, showing lines and numbers Vexen didn't fully understand yet. Zilak laughed, a dry, clicking sound that echoed in the room. "This is what they call life. An accident of the stars." Vexen tilted his head, his own glowing eyes flicking to Carter. The human looked small compared to the Krillaks, with his short brown hair and plain skin, but something about him felt different. Vexen couldn't say why. "Doctor," he said carefully, "the humans have survived a long time. Maybe are stronger than they look." Zilak spun around, his long arms crossing over his chest. "Stronger?" He snapped. "Don't be foolish, Vexen. Their planet is a mess. Storms, wars, sickness. They stumble through it all because they don't know better. We Krillaks are perfect. Our bodies heal fast. Our minds are sharp. This thing," he pointed at Carter, "it's a toy for us to study." Carter stayed quiet. His hands rested flat under the straps, and his face showed no fear. The aliens didn't notice the tiny twitch at the corner of his mouth, a hint of a smirk. He listened as Zilak kept talking, his words full of pride. "I've seen their kind before," Zilak said. "On other worlds, we've taken apart species like this. They'd break so easily. This one won't last 10 minutes under our tests." Vexen shifted his weight, his extra arms twitching. "What test, Doctor?" he asked. Zilak grinned, showing rows of sharp teeth. He reached for a shelf and pulled down a syringe. It was long and thin, filled with a liquid that glowed green and pulsed like it was alive. "This," he said, holding it up to the light, "our stress serum. It pushes a body to its limit. For us, it's nothing, just a warm-up. But for this human," he laughed again, "it'll shut him down. Heart will stop. Lungs will fail. We'll see how fast he falls apart." The room grew quiet for a moment, except for the hum of the machines. Vexen stared at the syringe, then at Carter. The human's eyes followed the glowing liquid, but he didn't flinch. Instead, his smirk grew just a little wider, still small enough to hide from Zilak's proud gaze. Vexen frowned. "Are you sure, Doctor? What if he—" "Enough." Zilak cut him off. "No what-ifs. I studied hundreds of species. I know failure when I see it. This human is nothing special." He stepped closer to Carter, the syringe gleaming in his hand. "Let's start the fun." Vexen watched the screens. "Record every second of this collapse." Vexen nodded and tapped his tablet. The machines beeped louder, lights flashing as they locked onto Carter's body. Zilak leaned over the table, his glowing eyes meeting the human's steady brown ones. "Don't worry," he said, his voice mocking. "It'll be quick. Your kind doesn't deserve more than that." Carter said nothing. His smirk stayed, faint but there, like he knew something Zilak didn't. The alien raised the syringe, aiming it at Carter's arm. The needle hovered above his skin, the green liquid swirling inside. Zilak's grin widened. "This specimen won't survive our simplest tests," he said. "Let's see how quickly it fails." The camera zoomed in tight on Carter's face. His eyes locked onto Zilak's. calm and sure. The needle pressed down. The room held its breath. What did Carter know? Why wasn't he scared? The answers hung in the air, pulling everyone deeper into the story. The medical bay's lights dimmed as Dr. Zilek pressed the syringe into Private Daniel Carter's arm. The glowing green serum slid into his veins, a thin river of alien fire. The machines around them whirred louder, their screens flashing with jagged red lines. Zilek stepped back, his forearms folding smugly across his chest. "It started," he said, his voice sharp with glee. "Watch, Vexen. This human's body will crumble in minutes." His glowing blue eyes flicked to the screens, expecting chaos. Vexen, the younger Krillax, clutched his tablet tighter. His extra limbs twitched as he stared at the numbers rolling in. Carter's heart thumped hard, twice as fast as before. His muscles tightened under the straps, veins bulging under his plain human skin. But no screams came, no sweat, no collapse. Vexen's head tilted, his long fingers tapping the screen. "Doctor," he said, his voice low, "these readings, they don't look right." Zilek snorted, a harsh click echoing off the silver walls. "Of course they don't. He's breaking already. One heart can't handle this. Look at him, pathetic." He waved a hand at Carter, who lay still on the table. But then the human's chest heaved, a deep breath that rattled the straps. His brown eyes opened wide, catching the light in a way that made Vexen step back. They weren't glowing, not yet, but something flickered there, sharp and alive. The air in the room shifted. A faint hum rose, not from the machines, but from somewhere deeper. Vexen's tablet beeped wildly, spitting out symbols the Krillax database didn't recognize. "Doctor," he said again, louder this time. "His blood, it's changing. The serum's not burning him out. It's mixing." Zilek's grin froze. He snatched the tablet from Vexen, his long fingers swiping at the screen. "Mixing," he snapped. "Impossible. Our serum destroys weak species. It doesn't mix." Carter's voice cut through the tension, low and steady. "You sure about that?" The words hung heavy, the first he'd spoken since the needle went in. Zilek's head whipped around, his glowing eyes narrowing. The human's lips curled, just a hint of that smirk again. Sharper now. "Your toys don't know me," Carter added, his voice calm but edged with something new. The straps creaked as his arms flexed, testing them. Vexen stumbled back, his tablet slipping in his grip. "Doctor, look," he stammered, pointing at a side monitor. A 3D image of Carter's inside spun slowly. His heart glowed faintly green, pumping harder than any Krillax could dream. Tiny sparks danced in his blood, like stars waking up. Zilek's smug mask cracked. "A glitch," he growled. "The machines are wrong. Humans don't adapt. They die." He slammed a fist on the console, but the screens only blinked faster, flooding with data. The hum grew louder, vibrating the floor. Carter's skin shimmered, not bright, not yet, but enough to make Vexen gasp. "He's taking it in," Vexen whispered. "The serum, it's not killing him. It's feeding him." Zilek shoved his assistant aside and leaned over Carter, his face inches from the human's. "What are you?" he hissed. Carter met his gaze, unflinching. "Just a man," he said. "For now." The machine screeched, a high, piercing sound, as Carter's readings spiked again. His temperature climbed, but his face stayed cool. Zilek's forehands clenched, his sharp teeth grinding. "Turn it up," he barked at Vexen. "More serum. Force the failure." Vexen hesitated, his eyes darting between the doctor and the human. "But sir, if he's—" "Do it," Zilek roared. Vexen fumbled with a control panel, and a second syringe whirred into place, pumping more green fire into Carter's arm. The human's body tensed, his fists balling under the straps. The screens went wild, lines zigzagging, numbers doubling. Zilak leaned closer, waiting for the crash. "Any second now," he muttered. "You'll beg, human. You'll break." But Carter didn't beg. His smirk widened, slow and sure, as the hum turned into a pulse. The air crackled. Vexen dropped his tablet, backing toward the wall. "Doctor, we need to stop," he pleaded. Zilak ignored him, his eyes locked on Carter. The human's chest rose again, deeper this time, and the straps groaned. Something was waking up inside him. Something the Krillax couldn't predict. The question burned. What was happening? And how far could it go? 7 minutes had passed since the second dose of glowing green serum flooded Private Daniel Carter's veins. The medical bay aboard the Krillax starship buzzed with tension. The machines screamed, their screams a mess of flashing lights and twisting lines. Dr. Zilak stood over Carter, his forearms stiff, his glowing blue eyes darting between the human and the chaotic displays. He'd expected collapse, shattered bones, a stopped heart. Instead, something impossible was happening. Carter's body shimmered, but not like the serum's glow. Thin threads of silver pulsed under his skin, weaving through his arms and chest like living wires. They weren't there before. Vexen, the younger Krillax assistant, pointed with a trembling hand. "Doctor, look at that," he said, his voice shaking. The threads moved, slow and steady, linking up in patterns no Krillax scanner could read. The air around Carter crackled, tiny sparks jumping from his fingertips to the metal table. Zilak's sharp teeth clicked together. "It's a trick," he snapped. "A flaw in the serum. Humans don't do this." He grabbed a scanner from Vexen and waved it over Carter's chest. The device whined, then sparked and died in his hand, smoke curling from its edges. Zilak dropped it, his long fingers curling into fists. "Fix the machines, Vexen. They're lying." Vexen scrambled to the console, his extra arms fumbling over the controls. "They're not broken," he said, his eyes wide. "His cells, they're building something. The serum's not burning him. It's growing." The main screen flickered, showing a close-up of Carter's blood. Tiny silver shapes spun inside it, sharp and strange, like crystals forming in real time. Vexen's voice dropped to a whisper. "This isn't in our records." Carter shifted on the table. The straps holding him groaned, metal bending under his grip. He turned his head, locking eyes with Zilak. "You should have studied us better," he said, his voice low but clear. The words hit like a punch. Zilak flinched. Small, quick, but enough to show the first crack in his pride. His glowing eyes narrowed, but the smug grin he'd worn before was gone, replaced by a tight line. The room trembled. A deep thud pulsed from Carter's chest. Not a heartbeat, but something heavier. The silver threads under his skin glowed brighter, spreading to his neck. One strap snapped with a loud crack, dangling uselessly. Vexen yelped and ducked behind the console. "Doctor, he's not human anymore," he cried. Zilak spun on him, fury in his voice. "Don't be stupid. He's a test subject, nothing more." But doubt crept into Zilak's words. He stepped closer to Carter, leaning over him. "What are you hiding?" he hissed. Carter's brown eyes met his, steady and unafraid. "Not hiding," he said, "showing." His free hand flexed, and the silver threads pulsed faster. A faint hum filled the air, not from the machines, but from him. The sound wrapped around Zilak, making his scales itch. The screens flared again. A new image popped up. Carter's brain, lit up like a storm. Waves of light danced across it, faster and wilder than any Krillax mind could match. Vexen gasped. His thoughts, they are rewriting themselves. "He's learning us, Doctor. He's learning everything." Zilak stared, his forearms dropping to his sides. For the first time, he didn't have an answer. Carter sat up slowly, the remaining straps creaking. The silver threads crawled up his face, framing his eyes with faint, shimmering lines. He didn't look human now, not fully. Your serum woke something up, he said, his voice carrying a strange echo. Something you don't understand. Zilak stumbled back, his confidence shattering. This isn't possible, he muttered. You're a primitive. A nothing. The hum grew louder, shaking the floor. Carter tilted his head, a smirk tugging at his lips. Keep telling yourself that, he said. Another strap broke, metal twisting like paper. Vexen pressed himself against the wall, his tablet forgotten. Doctor, we need to stop this, he begged. Zilak didn't move. His glowing eyes stayed fixed on Carter, wide and unsure. The machines wailed, overwhelmed. Sparks flew from the console, and the lights flickered. Carter's silver threads pulsed once, bright and fierce, then settled into a steady glow. Zilak's breath caught. He didn't laugh. He didn't mock. For the first time, he was silent, staring at the human who wasn't breaking, who was becoming something more. The question burned. What had they unleashed? The medical bay of the Krillak starship trembled as the experiment hit its 9th minute. Sparks rained from the ceiling, and the machines howled, their screens drowning in a flood of alien symbols. Dr. Zilak stood frozen, his forearms limp, his glowing blue eyes locked on Private Daniel Carter. The human sat upright on the table, the last strap hanging in tatters. Silver threads pulsed under his skin, weaving a web of light that climbed his neck and framed his face. But now, something new flickered, a soft golden haze rising from his chest like mist. Vexen, the young Krillak's assistant, clung to the console, his extra limbs shaking. Doctor, the results, he shouted, pointing at the central screen. It flared to life, projecting a hologram above Carter's head. The image wasn't just cells or blood anymore. It was a map, a swirling spiral of gold and silver threading through Carter's body. Numbers raced beside it, too fast to read, until they locked on a single word in Krillak's script. Unbound. Vexen's voice cracked. That's not possible. It means he's free of limits. Zilak's scales bristled. Shut it down, he barked, lunging for the controls. But the console sparked under his touch, shoving him back. The golden haze around Carter thickened, curling into tendrils that brushed the air. The human's eyes glowed, not blue like the Krillak's, but a warm amber, deep and alive. He stood, his bare feet steady on the trembling floor, and the room seemed to bend around him. Vexen tapped his tablet, desperate for answers. His cells, they're not just growing, he said, his words tumbling out. They're singing. The hologram shifted, showing Carter's blood again. The silver threads spun faster, but now golden flecks danced between them, pulsing in rhythm. A faint sound rose. A melody, soft but clear, like wind through a forest. It wasn't the machines. It was him. Vexen dropped the tablet, his glowing eyes wide. He's rewriting life itself. Carter raised a hand, and the golden tendrils flared. The broken straps floated up, twisting into spirals before crumbling to dust. You wanted to see me fail, he said, his voice calm but layered, as if two tones spoke at once. You got something else. Zilak stumbled back, his confidence a memory. This is a mutation, he stammered. A mistake. The hologram pulsed, zooming in on Carter's heart. It beat strong, wrapped in gold and silver, but now faint shapes flickered around it. Echoes of something older, deeper. Vexen gasped. Doctor, look. It's not just him. It's history. The screen flashed images. Humans climbing mountains, forging steel, reaching for stars. Each pulse of Carter's heart carried a shadow of Earth's past, woven into his blood. He's carrying them, Vexen whispered. All of them. Zilak's hands shook. Lies. He roared. Your species is nothing. Weak, slow, dying. But his words faltered as Carter stepped forward. The golden haze spread, brushing the walls, and the machines quieted, their screens dimming in awe. Weak, Carter said, his amber eyes piercing Zilak. We've been falling and standing up for thousands of years. Your serum didn't break me. It opened me. The floor cracked under Carter's feet, not from force, but from something alive beneath. Thin vines of gold sprouted through the metal, curling up like roots seeking light. Vexen fell to his knees, staring. He's not just adapting, he said. He's becoming a bridge. The hologram flared one last time, showing Carter's brain again. The amber light inside it pulsed outward, linking to the gold in his blood, then beyond, past the ship, past the stars. Zilak clutched his head, his scales paling. "What are you?" he whispered. Carter's smirk returned, softer now, but fierce. "Human," he said. "And more." He snapped his fingers, and the vines pulsed, sending a ripple through the room. The console shattered, its pieces floating in the golden haze. Vexen crawled back, terrified, while Zilak stood speechless, his arrogance drowned in the glow. The melody grew, a song of survival and defiance, echoing from Carter's core. The test results weren't just numbers. They were a story, a truth the Krulax couldn't deny. Carter wasn't failing. He was rising, pulling something vast and ancient with him. The question hung heavy. What had the serum unlocked? And what would he do next? The medical bay of the Krulax starship stood in ruins. Shattered screens flickered weakly, and golden vines curled through the cracked floor, pulsing with faint light. Private Daniel Carter stood tall in the center, his amber eyes glowing softly, the silver threads under his skin weaving with a golden haze that danced around him. Dr. Zilak, the once proud Krulax physician, slumped against the wall, his forearms trembling. Vexen, his assistant, stared at Carter, his glowing blue eyes wide with fear and awe. 9 minutes into the test, and the human wasn't just surviving. He was rewriting the rules. Carter turned his head, the golden haze swirling like a living cloak. "You think you know us," he said, his voice steady, but humming with that strange, double tone. "You don't." The air shivered, and the room dimmed. Shadows stretched across the walls, not from lights, but from something deeper. They twisted into shapes, faint outlines of humans, flickering like ghosts. Zilak blinked, his scales rattling. What is this?" he rasped. The golden haze flared, and the shadows sharpened. A vision unfolded, pulled from Carter's blood, his breath, his bones. It wasn't just his story, it was theirs. The first shadow showed a human, hunched and shivering, clutching a spear on a frozen plain. Ice bit at his skin, but he stood, eyes fierce, staring down a beast twice his size. "We started weak," Carter said, his voice echoing. "Cold, hungry, alone." The beast lunged, but the human drove the spear deep, blood staining the snow. The shadow faded, replaced by another. This time, a woman stood in a burning village, her face smudged with ash. Flames roared around her, but she gripped a child tight, running through the chaos. "We fell," Carter continued. "Wars tore us apart. Fires took our homes." The woman stumbled, then rose, her jaw set as she carried the child to safety. The vision shifted again. Hundreds of humans, hands linked, building a wall of stone under a stormy sky. Lightning flashed, but they didn't stop. Zilak pushed himself up, his voice weak. "This proves nothing. You suffered. You died. That's weakness." Carter's amber eyes locked onto him, unyielding. "No," he said. "That's strength." The shadows spun faster. A man in a tattered coat knelt in mud, planting a seed as rain pounded down. It grew, slowly at first, then fast, into a tree that stretched toward the sun. "Every time we broke, we learned," Carter said. "Every scar made us harder." The golden haze pulsed, and the visions grew wilder. A ship of steel roared into the sky, flames trailing behind as humans cheered below. Then, a figure in a suit walked on a gray, lifeless moon, planting a flag in silence. "We reached for what you ignored," Carter said. You built perfection. We built survival. The shadows merged into a single glow, a web of light connecting every human who'd ever lived, their struggles and triumphs woven into Carter's frame. Vexen's tablet beeped, pulling data from the haze. Doctor, he whispered, his cells. They hold memory. Not just his. All of them. The screen showed Carter's blood again, but now it shimmered with countless tiny echoes. Faces, voices, moments. Zilak shook his head, his arrogance crumbling. Memory isn't power, he muttered. It's noise. Carter stepped forward, the golden vines following him like loyal shadows. Noise? He said. It's a chorus. The melody from before returned, louder now. A song of defiance, rising from his chest. The vines twisted up the walls, blooming with faint golden flowers that pulsed in time. Your serum didn't make me, he said. It woke what was already there. 1,000,000 years of fighting, falling, standing up. The visions flared one last time. A child in a cave, painting a star on a wall. A soldier shielding a friend from fire. A scientist staring at a glowing screen, smiling as numbers clicked into place. We don't heal like you, Carter said. We grow. We carry our past, and it carries us. The golden haze settled around him, a crown of light and roots. Zilak sank back, his glowing eyes dull. This can't be, he breathed. Vexen dropped to the floor, staring at the flowers. He's not just one, he said. He's all of them. Carter's smirk returned, quiet but fierce. The secret was out. Humanity wasn't fragile. It was a force, buried deep, waiting. And now, it was awake. 11 minutes into the experiment, the Krillax medical bay was a battlefield of light and ruin. Golden vines twisted through the cracked floor, their faint flowers glowing like tiny suns. Private Daniel Carter stood in the center, his amber eyes blazing, silver threads pulsing under his skin, and a golden haze swirling around him like a storm held in check. Dr. Zilak, the once arrogant Krillax physician, pressed himself against the wall, his forearms shaking. Vexen, his assistant, crouched behind the shattered console, his glowing blue eyes darting between fear and wonder. Carter flexed his hands, and the air rippled. The golden haze thickened, stretching into threads that wove a net around him. Not solid, but alive, shimmering with whispers of that ancient melody. You thought you'd break me, he said, his voice steady, carrying the echo of countless humans. You lit a fire instead. The net pulsed, and the vines on the floor shivered, sending a tremor through the ship. Zilak's scales clattered as he fumbled for a weapon, a sleek, black prod humming with energy. Stay back, Zilak shouted, thrusting the prod forward. A bolt of blue light shot out, aimed at Carter's chest. But the golden net snapped up, catching the blast like a hand grabbing a fly. The energy fizzled, then dissolved, sinking into the haze. Carter tilted his head, his smirk sharp. Nice try, he said. He stepped forward, and the net moved with him, stretching toward Zilak. The alien swung again, but Carter's hand shot out, faster than human, faster than Krillax, and caught the prod midair. The weapon cracked in his grip, metal bending like wet clay. Zilak yanked his arm back, but Carter held tight, pulling the alien closer. Your tech's good, Carter said, his amber eyes locking onto Zilak's. Mine's older. The golden net flared, and faint shapes flickered inside it. Shadows of spears, swords, hammers, all forged by human hands across time. They spun around Zilak, not touching him, but close enough to make him freeze. Vexen scrambled to his feet, his voice high. Doctor, he's not just strong. He's them. The tablet in his hands beeped, showing Carter's energy spiking beyond the Krillax scale. The silver threads under his skin glowed brighter, linking to the golden haze in a dance of light. Then something new emerged, a faint outline around Carter, like a second self, tall and shimmering. It wasn't flesh, it was will, a human spirit stitched from every fight, every stand, every dawn. Zilak's prod fell to the floor, useless. This is madness, he choked out, his arrogance a distant memory. Carter released him, and the alien stumbled back, clutching his chest. The golden net tightened around Carter, then sank into his skin, leaving only the vines and that shimmering outline. Madness, Carter said. No, it's us. He raised a hand, and the vines surged, wrapping the console in a cage of gold. The screens flared once, then died, their data swallowed by the roots. The ship groaned, lights flickering as Carter's presence pressed against it. The outline around him sharpened, a warrior's stance, broad and unyielding. Your serum didn't make me, he said, his voice low but thunderous. It called me out. The vines pulsed, and the air grew heavy, thick with that melody, louder now, a chant of survival. Zilak dropped to his knees, his glowing eyes dull. What are you? He whispered. Carter's outline flickered, showing 1,000 faces. Hunters, builders, dreamers, all at once, then back to his own. I'm the answer, he said. He turned to Vexen, who flinched but didn't run. You saw it, Carter added. Tell him. Vexen nodded, slow and shaky. The readings. They say he's an anchor. He holds them, all the humans. Past, present, everything. Alarms blared, sharp and sudden, as the ship's systems caught the surge. Carter's outline pulsed, and the golden vines climbed higher, cracking the ceiling. Shards of metal floated up, caught in the haze, spinning like stars. Zilak crawled back, his voice a whimper. Stop him, Vexen. Do something. But Vexen stayed still, staring at Carter. I can't, he said. He's bigger than us. Carter stepped toward the door, the vines trailing him like a guard. The outline around him glowed fierce, a silent promise. The power had shifted, not just in the room, but in the story of what humans could be. Zilak's control was gone, and Carter held the reins now. Humanity's reins. 13 minutes had torn the Krillax medical bay apart. Golden vines snaked through the walls, their glowing flowers pulsing like heartbeats. The air shimmered with a haze of light, thick with the echoes of a human chant. Private Daniel Carter stood at the room's edge, his amber eyes fierce, silver threads gleaming under his skin. Around him hovered a shimmering outline, a warrior woven from humanity's past, tall and radiant, its presence heavy with every step he took. Dr. Zilak knelt in the rubble, his forearms limp, his glowing blue eyes dull. Vexen, his assistant, pressed against the wall, too stunned to move. Carter raised a hand, and the golden haze flared into a crown above his head. Not solid, but alive, spinning with faint stars. The ship shuddered, alarms screaming as lights burst overhead. You wanted to see what I am, Carter said, his voice deep, layered with the strength of countless voices. Here it is. The vines surged, cracking the floor wide open. From the gap rose a glow, not gold or silver, but white, pure, and blinding, like the core of a sun. It pulsed, and the air sang, a song of earth, fire, and sky, older than the Krillax could fathom. Zilak's scales rattled as he tried to stand. Stop this, he croaked, clawing at the ground. You're nothing. A test gone wrong. But his words drowned in the light. The white glow stretched, shaping into figures. Humans, not shadows now, but solid echoes. A hunter with a spear, a mother with a child, a pilot in a cracked helmet. All stood behind Carter, their eyes locked on Zilak. The crown above Carter spun faster, and the figure stepped forward, silent but unyielding. Vexen's tablet sparked and died, its screen black. Doctor, he whispered, they're not just memories. They're here. The figures moved, circling Zilak. The hunter tapped his spear on the floor, sending a ripple through the vines. The mother's gaze burned, fierce and protective. The pilot crossed his arms, a faint grin on his face. Zilak shrank back, his arrogance buried under their weight. This isn't real," he stammered. "You can't." Carter cut him off. "We can." He snapped his fingers, and the white light flared again. The figures dissolved into streams of brilliance, spiraling up to the crown. The ship groaned as the vines climbed higher, piercing the ceiling. Metal twisted and fell, caught in the golden haze like leaves in a storm. Then the crown pulsed once, hard, and a wave rolled out. Not force, but truth. It hit Zilak, pinning him flat, his breath stolen. Footsteps echoed. Krillak's guards burst through the door, their weapons raised, long staffs crackling with blue fire. "Halt," one shouted, aiming at Carter. But he turned, calm and sure, the crown glowing brighter. The white light flared from his chest, and the guards froze. Their staffs clattered to the ground, their glowing eyes wide. The hunter's spear tapped again, a rhythm they couldn't resist. One guard dropped to his knees, then another, their scales paling as the chant filled their heads. Carter stepped past them, the vines parting like a path. "You tested me," he said, glancing back at Zilak. "You lost." The crown dimmed, sinking into his skin, leaving only the silver threads and amber eyes. The white light lingered, a faint shimmer in the air, marking where the echoes had stood. Zilak lifted his head, his voice a broken whisper. "What are you?" The human paused at the door, his outline flickering one last time. "Warrior, survivor, all of them." "Human," he said, his smirk returning. "That's enough." He walked out, the vines trailing him, their flowers dimming but alive. The guard stayed down, staring at the empty space he'd left. Vexen slid to the floor, his hands shaking. "He's gone," he murmured. Zilak didn't move. His eyes stayed fixed on the ruined lab. Screens dead, vines curling, the air heavy with that fading song. His pride was gone, his words lost. The ship trembled once more, then fell silent. Carter's footsteps faded down the hall, a promise in every echo. The Krillaks had underestimated him, underestimated them all. Now, they knew, and they'd never forget. The screen lingered on Zilak, speechless and small, as a final whisper hung in the air. "They'll never underestimate us again, or will they?"